The Laura Ingraham Show.
Is that this is going to be a whirlwind of activity for the next 4 years, not just the next 100 days. The Democrats are taking so many fast pitches, and then the sliders come in, then the knuckleball, then the curveball, brushing them back from the plate. And then they think that they can defy the president's legal determination and policy determination on immigration with this temporary ban of people coming into the country on certain type of visas and the pause in the refugee program. They think that someone who takes the oath of office as the acting attorney general can actually just be insubordinate without any repercussions whatsoever. But it's kind of like the way they view illegal immigration. You can come into the country, you can do things that are unlawful, and then there are no repercussions. You can stay as long as you want. So Ms. Yates, the acting attorney general, should have been allowed to stay as long as she wanted and to continue to violate her oath of office. And those who would describe this as a Saturday night massacre, I tweeted that out as a joke last night, Monday Night Massacre. Though I call those people headline historians. Because they see a couple of words in a headline and they think, oh, it's just like the Saturday Night Massacre. Oh, shit, it's echoes of the Saturday Night Massacre. We had Michael Beschloss saying that last night with Rachel Maddow on MSNBC. We had Don Lemon asking supposedly serious political analysts who are supposed to know better about the reverberations of the Saturday Night Massacre in October 1973, when the Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General refused to fire the special prosecutor who had been hired to investigate Watergate, specifically going after the tapes, the Watergate tapes. So they refused to fire a special counsel, special prosecutor. And so they were relieved of their duties. They resigned. They were relieved of their duties. And historians and political pundits today want to say this is like the Saturday Night Massacre when we had an attorney general who obviously just held herself out, as Alan Dershowitz said last night, as just a political hero of the moment. The political hero of the moment was going to be Ms. Yates, because she stepped in after all the protests and said, I can't do this, without actually issuing a statement explaining why she was not going to carry out the president's enforcement of the president's executive order on the refugees, the visas. No explanation, just said, I'm not going to do it. Well, she had to be fired. George Terwilliger last night was the H.W. Bush's attorney general. He chimed in.
When the acting attorney general took pretensions to make herself an umpire and stand between and arbitrate, it seemed, between the president and the legal opponents of this executive order, she was out of line. So if she didn't resign, she had to be fired, and rightly so, in my view.
Your view on what Trump did, this was an expeditious removal of an individual who was engaged in a wholesale act, in an unjustifiable act of pure insubordination. If it wasn't politically motivated, boy, it certainly had the appearance of looking like it was politically motivated. There is neither a constitutional nor a statutory prohibition on what Donald Trump did last Friday in issuing those executive orders. He is well within his duties as President of the United States to put a temporary halt on immigration of entire classes of people if that's what he wishes. And Congress can come forward and they can pass new legislation on immigration anytime they want. But the idea that an acting attorney general can act as a political pundit on MSNBC and just say, no, make me, which is essentially what she said. She was asking to be fired. And liberal legal scholars said as much over the last 18 hours. Both Jonathan Turley and Alan Dershowitz both saying so.
I thought it was very odd. I don't know what her motivations were. But on the constitutional side, it favors him. On the statutory side, there's an argument under a 1965 law. But there's compelling arguments on the other side supporting the president. That's not the type of circumstance where the head of an agency tells all of the lawyers in the Justice Department not to assist the president of the United States.
Host after host last night on cable news. I was enjoying every moment of it because we actually know the Constitution and you know the statutory interpretation. It is hilarious to listen to both so-called historians and legal scholars, other than Dershowitz and Turley, try to argue this case for Sally Yates and try to argue the case that, oh, well, the president shouldn't have used the word betrayed. She betrayed her duty. Betrayed the Department of Justice. We'll get into that next segment. But Dershowitz, again, who's no conservative, he's a liberal legal scholar. At least he got it right.
Well, Sally Yates is a terrific public servant, but I think she's made a serious mistake here. This is holdover heroism. It's so easy to be a heroine when you're not appointed by this president and when you're on the other side. She made a serious mistake.
She made a serious mistake in doing what she did. But remember what Barack Obama said in one of his final addresses to the nation. He gave the protesters who are amassing all across the country a wink and a nod. He gave the Democrats marching orders. It's up to you to stay in this fight. It's up to you to continue on this struggle and this perfecting of the union that he sought to do when he came into office January 20th, 2009. We're going to take a break here on the Laura Ingraham Show. Joe DeGenova is going to join us. We're going to tackle every aspect of this last 24 hours, actually last 4 or 5 days, as the Trump administration is set to announce his new nominee to be Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. The inside track looks like it could be to Tom Hardiman on the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. I had the pleasure of meeting Judge Hardiman. And I'm looking forward to tonight. I'll be on Hannity live tonight. I'll be on special report before the announcement comes out. We'll hit all angles of this. But Sally Yates, she must have done Barack Obama really proud yesterday. Another community organizer, this time working at the highest levels of the Justice Department. There was a lot of speculation last night on television about whether the fact that Jared Kushner was on Shabbat, meaning he's incommunicado from sundown on Friday through the Sabbath, so sunset on Saturday. And I had 2 or 3 people messaging me last night saying, well, is it true that when Jared's off the grid, all this bad stuff happened, like on last weekend? And this is a kind of analysis that you just scratch your head. As if this was not being worked upon for days and days and days, as if they just drafted this on Friday afternoon. Of course, everybody in the West Wing signed off on this. Of course, Jared Kushner signed off on this. I can't imagine that it was just drafted in the afternoon or between 4:30 and sundown. It's ridiculous. But this is the level of absurdity that we've reached. And I will ask you this. Who is sowing more chaos and disorder in the United States today? Donald Trump actually either enforcing statutes that are on the books, issuing executive orders to follow through on his promises, or the Democrats who are tying airports up with protests, who are shutting down major thoroughfares in major cities across the United States, and who are sending messages out to all of their activist combatants to resist Trump at every turn. Who's more responsible for, quote, chaos in America? Now, you can quibble with and argue about how this executive order to put this temporary pause on this immigration, the refugees and the refugees and the visas from certain countries, 7 Muslim countries. You can argue with how they rolled it out. And I said on Fox and Friends there were things that I would have done differently. Still would have created an uproar on the left, but you might have brought along some of the Republicans with you. You might have, I think Tillerson, it sounds like Tillerson is not thrilled about how this was done. Of course, new Secretary of State. And it's not clear whether anyone on Capitol Hill was really consulted except for some senior staff. It doesn't look like the senators were really brought in on this. And I think the Trump administration is probably taking that, well, maybe the pathway that Priebus laid out yesterday or the day before on Meet the Press when he said you have to pull the Band-Aid off here. We have to worry about the future of this country, our safety, our economic future, but our safety and security. And we have a lot of holes in our immigration system as it is. We've got to take a pause until we can absolutely have in place common sense and practical approaches to bringing in the refugees that we know are not going to be a problem, and also really re-examine who comes into this country on visas and why, from what countries. How can we make sure they leave when they're supposed to? To me, that all makes sense, and I think it probably could have been pre-produced better. But I've said that from the beginning. I'm about communications, and I think you could blunt some of the criticism if it's rolled out a little bit more smoothly. And I'm not trying to second guess anyone. It's always tough. It's easier to be a critic than it is to be a doer. So they're doing. You got one side is in the perpetual protest mania. That's what their perpetual protest mentality. And the other side, in the Trump administration, you have the doers and the workers. The talkers versus the workers. Okay, I talk for a living. But they're working over at the White House. And they're doing for the most part, what they said they were going to do. We'll take a break. 855-40-LAURA. Joe DeGenova will join us. The headline historians getting it wrong. Don't go away. Is he going to cry again like he did the day before with all the Muslims behind him? Is he going to start crying? I mean, this was just preposterous.
Yeah, his version of the crying game had a strange finish to it, just like the movie. Here's the thing about what happened at the Department of Justice with Sally Yates. Here's the first question you have to ask. Why in the hell was she still there? Why did they keep her? Why did they make her the acting attorney general? Rule 1, according to a very dear friend of mine, a former Republican governor, we were chatting about this last night after she was fired. You don't keep politicians in charge of agencies from the other administration. You replace them with anybody, a secretary, a clerk. Anybody has the legal right to be. Why didn't they pick this guy from the Eastern District of Virginia right away if he's so damn good? This was inevitable. Anybody who knew Sally Yates knew she was a political hack. And in fact, people were reporting to the administration last week that she was seeking to undermine the president's initiatives. This was before the Friday order. That information was sent to them, and the reason she was fired so quickly was because people inside the department were reporting that she was being a recalcitrant. She was verbally saying things to the staff about not following the president's directive. By the way, this is not just happening in justice. This is happening at the Department of State, where people are purposely over-enforcing the president's order in order to make life difficult for as many people as possible and create even more backlash than there has been. At any rate, she was insubordinate. She deserved to be fired. What she did was disgraceful. Of course, she doesn't view it that way because she is, in fact, a political hack.
Well, Joe, this leads us to ask who made this decision? Who made the decision to make her attorney general? Where would that have come from?
I have no idea. And in fact, certainly people like us were not consulted.
Right.
Notwithstanding the fact that we have deep knowledge of the department, we know where the bodies are buried. Mm-hmm. The transition team was very responsive when you would call and give them information. They kind of shut down right after the inauguration and stopped talking to people. And I know they had these so-called landing teams inside the departments, which were supposed to prevent something like this from happening. So presumably, these landing teams were the ones who said this would be a safe move. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how in the world you could think that anybody like Sal, all you have to do is spend 5 minutes with her, and you're dealing with a whack job.
Well, so what is the to explain the process for the new Trump cabinet to clean out, if possible, Obama holdovers? Well, because a lot of them are career civil servants, correct? And they work in justice all over the Justice Department. But you can't fire them, right? You can just detail them to other places?
Well, what you have to do is, and this has to be done in every agency, it's a very difficult task.
Has to be a clean out in every agency. Joe DeGenova is saying that you have to clean out every agency and every cabinet department of all these holdovers.
Keep people in place. But remember, inside each of these agencies, there are people who are aligned with you. They include civil servants, and they include people in the senior executive service who are not Democrats, but who are people who are concerned about the legitimacy of government, and they will help you. In fact, many of those people were among the people giving information to me and others about what Sally Yates was doing. There are a huge number of people inside the Department of Justice, for example, who are prepared to take over and fill slots. What you do traditionally is you reorganize, quote unquote. You go in, you change the boxes, you change a participle or a preposition, and you give someone a new title, and they are moved out to a different spot, and then the person that you want takes over, and that's it. There's a huge number of spots where that can be done.
So you can, with a few smart deputies, you can go office by office to weed out those who would be recalcitrant and insubordinate to the priorities of this administration?
Yes, that is exactly right. And you have to have very strong people in these deputy positions. For example, like the Assistant Attorney General will have several Deputy Assistant Attorney Generals under him or her. Those people have to be aggressive but professional in the way they take account of what's going on. It doesn't take long if you talk to people who are in there, who are loyal to you and are responsible public servants, to find out who the good guys and the bad guys are. For example, if you go to the Civil Rights Division and you look for Barbara Bosserman, who did the investigation into Lois Lerner, you can pretty much figure out that Barbara Bosserman is somebody you're not going to want on your team. Now, she can stay in the department. She can even stay in the Civil Rights Division. But she's not necessarily anybody who's going to get a lot of work.
I see. So you even if you can't really technically fire these people, but you can reassign them. You could detail them to another agency or detail them to Anchorage, Alaska. You can move people around. You can do all sorts of things, and that's perfectly legal. And in fact, they don't have to be included in certain meetings that are held to discuss things that are going to happen, et cetera, et cetera. This is, again, taking control of a government that is, remember, populated. Almost 90% of all government employees are Democrats. Huge numbers of them belong to public service unions. And so I commend to people, by the way, a wonderful article in the Wall Street Journal by Philip K. Howard about how the President of the United States can once again take control of the federal government by controlling the civil service through his powers as the chief executive of the United States. Fascinating stuff about how the civil service is actually unconstitutional in many respects. The landing
because
team
you can't fire people.
Right. It's ridiculous. It's like the teachers' unions. You can't fire teachers.
That's exactly what it is.
Let me read this to you, that just because I want to get back to how these decisions were made. The Trump landing team was Patrick Rowan, Jesse Liu, and Ronald Tenpass. They all worked in private practice. Rowan was an 18-year veteran of DOJ, led the National Security Unit during the George W. Bush years. Rowan, so he supervised DOJ appearances and intelligence surveillance court, etc. He worked at McGuire Woods. Liu was at Morrison and Foerster. He was also with National Security, and Tenpass also came from a Justice Department background, and he was seen as a possible leadership pick for Trump's Justice Department. So these people were not neophytes, and if I mean, God bless them, but if these three guys were responsible for putting Yates in, I mean, what about their judgment? I mean, honestly.
Well, I really do not understand keeping her. You have to simply
Makes no
say
sense.
to yourself, why would you keep someone who is so political and so dangerous and so likely to do it? You could have predicted that this would come to pass, and in fact, it was unbelievably predictable. Her insubordination was eminently predictable. And again, I have to say this, if you spent 5 minutes with Sally Yates, you would know that this is a person of the extreme left who should not have been anywhere near the decision-making process for this president.
A person of the extreme left. Wow. Well, again, if you knew it and so many others knew it, why didn't they know it? This is a cautionary tale for the future. This is a cautionary tale.
The next person who better watch out is Rex Tillerson. The Department of State
the worst.
is a cesspool of anti-Trumpism. Democrats, you've seen this nonsense about these 100 former Department of State people who are sending a letter and they're using the dissent channel inside the State Department. The people at the State Department believe in elections for other countries, but not ours.
Yeah, free elections. The purple finger in Iraq, but giving the finger to the American people. Yeah, that's
yes.
That's
and
a good
the other thing these guys need to do is they need to get their messaging down.
Oh my
and
God.
They need to have a set number of surrogates and some talking points completely missing from the rollout of the initiative on refugees and immigration.
I said this.
Missing.
Yeah, I said this on Friday night, and I was like, who's going out for the administration? And don't you think, Joe, they need to have a lawyer go out who actually knows the law and the Constitution? No offense to Stephen Miller, who's a friend of mine, or any of these other folks, but a lawyer who actually understands what was done, why it was done, and why it's wholly consistent with our Constitution and statutory provisions in the U.S. Code. But they didn't have that. They had a lot of analysts, political types go out.
Yeah, what they need is people who can say, number one, that this is a constitutionally valid, and it has been since the beginning of our time, for the president to control immigration and foreign policy. There is no right for a non-citizen to enter the United States, even with a visa. You do not have a right to enter the United States. And this is another thing that people don't realize. Even United States citizens returning to our country can be pulled aside and questioned for a number of hours. For example, we have a client who regularly travels to the Middle East, Asia, and Africa. Every time he returns to the United States as a citizen, he is pulled aside for what is called secondary questioning, usually for at least an hour, explaining what he did while he was in Africa or Asia or the Middle East. He is a United States citizen. So I don't know what all this screaming is. One of the dangerous things that the Democrats are doing, they're not just delegitimizing Trump. They're delegitimizing the constitutional and legal order by lying about what is and what isn't a constitutional right. Here they are lying that these immigrants have a constitutional right to enter the United States. They do not.
And imagine if they did. Imagine the lawsuits. Imagine would there be federal civil rights lawsuits filed from all over across the globe against the U.S. government? What would they be? 1983 action? What would they be? I don't know my federal civil law.
These would be Guantanamo type actions. State actors preventing people. See, once you have a protected right, once they say it's a denial of due process. Well, you don't have due process at the entrance to the United States. You're not in the United States when you are entering the United States. But believe me, it's coming down the pike, and these folks better be ready for it. And I'm not sure that they are. I hope that they are. I want them to be better.
How important is it for Jeff Sessions to pick a solicitor general that's a lawyer's lawyer, not a political lawyer?
Oh, I think it's really important. And my vote's for Chuck Cooper, who is one of the great constitutional lawyers of our time, was in the Office of Legal Counsel for many years in the Reagan administration. Great constitutional lawyer, has represented states in huge civil actions and constitutional actions against the United States. Somebody of Chuck Cooper's caliber has got to be the Solicitor General of the United States. We've got to have it. Be a great lawyer.
We really appreciate it. Joe DeGenova, great analysis. Sally Yates was known inside the department as she's a leftist and a political hack. She should never have been put in that position. That was the mistake of the Trump team, and they can't afford any more of these mistakes. No way. Not with everything on the line. I appreciate it, Joe. Thank you so much. We'll close it out. Stay with us. We have a lot more to get to here on the Laura Ingraham Show, but the first thing we're doing out of an act of charity is we're sending our little portable PA system over to Nancy Pelosi's office, because with a message as uplifting as hers, really everybody needs to hear it. Or 5 days. Just a few days since the inauguration on January 20th, that's when Loretta Lynch left office. So they had to have someone running the department. But I believe she was not Senate confirmed, or was she Senate? I don't think she had been confirmed by the Senate in a previous position. If she had been, then she could sign off on the FISA warrants for the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. But find out if previously she had been confirmed by the Senate, Drew, because I know her replacement, in fact, had been confirmed by the Senate as U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia. So, so Dana Bovin had been already confirmed by the Senate in a different position, but he has the authority to issue warrants sought by the Justice Department, or warrants that are reviewed by that will be sent to the FISA court, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act court, the secret tribunal, which oversees our investigations into possible terrorism against the United States. That's very important. But DeGeneva said this woman, who was a longtime civil servant, was already kicking up dust in the department last week and the week before, grousing about Trump. So why did they pick her? Whoever was responsible for that should not be working for the Trump administration. Heaven forbid I mix those two up.
You're fired.
Sorry, didn't mean to say it that way. Newt Gingrich is going to join us in just a short while here on the Laura Ingraham Show. He was on Hannity along with myself last night, so you want to make sure to hear what Newt says about the politics of all of this. And on Life Zet, Trump, he has some options when it comes to getting his nominee to the Supreme Court confirmed, and how will he do that? The Democrats are set to resist Trump at every point along the way, except maybe in spending money on infrastructure. But they're going to resist Trump. This is their strategy for the next 4 years, and they're not going to relent. So knowing that, what should Trump do to get his nominee confirmed? Could be Tom Hardiman of the Third Circuit. It also could be Neil Gorsuch or Judge William Pryor, but I think Pryor is not in the top three right now, which is unfortunate. But Hardiman is, will do just fine. Pryor was the best. I would have gone for the best, and might as well fight. If you're going to fight, might as well fight for the real deal. Why go for someone who is not 100%, with the judicial originalists? And there are some questions, although I'm not even sure how fair they are, of Hardiman, who I personally like very much. Neil Gorsuch clerked for Chief Justice, he clerked for Justice Byron White when Byron White was retired. And as is customary at the court, he was loaned out to Justice Anthony Kennedy. So right there, some people find Gorsuch suspicious because he was a Kennedy clerk. But that doesn't mean that he's not phenomenal. Just because you were a Kennedy clerk doesn't mean you wouldn't be a fantastic justice in the vein of Scalia or Thomas. But we'll keep you up to date on all of that as well. Gorsuch from the 10th Circuit in Colorado, and Pryor, of course, on the 11th Circuit in Alabama. So we'll talk to Newt. He's coming up. California is now considering enacting a statewide sanctuary for illegal immigrants. Again, what does that mean? What does that mean? That means perpetual legal warfare for the Justice Department. That means lawsuits are going to be filed. I think the left is going to try to overwhelm the Trump administration in litigation. And that does slow you down. There's no doubt about it. It slows you down, especially because President Obama was able to place so many federal district court judges and appellate court judges in the federal court. So he did get a lot of appointments. In 8 years, he was able to reconstitute much of the judiciary, and now Trump wants to get some of that back and fill some of these vacancies. But Obama had a huge impact on the courts for the negative. And Obama, of course, tweeted out yesterday, as we knew he would, on the refugee pause and the travel ban and the immigration, visas going out to 7 countries that we're going to put a pause on, he tweeted against that. So it didn't take him long to chime in. Completely classless. So what did Trump do last night at 9 p.m., and was he legally allowed to do this? We had a lot of different people chiming in yesterday, including people like Alan Dershowitz, Jonathan Turley, other legal scholars who have to say, because if they're honest, they have to say he was well within his rights of doing this, both on a statutory, a constitutional basis. He's right on the legality of what he did, and also as well. Let's play George Terwilliger. Of course, he was the H.W. Bush Deputy Attorney General, and he said this.
When the acting Attorney General took pretensions to make herself an umpire and stand between and arbitrate, it seemed, between the president and the legal opponents of this executive order, she was out of line. So if she didn't resign, she had to be fired, and rightly so, in my view.
Well, she didn't resign. She had to be fired. I like the fact that Trump had his Patco moment. Remember when Reagan fired the air traffic controllers? That was early on in his administration. He fired them. It was a summary firing. They went on strike, said, no, you can't strike, can't shut down air travel. Can't do that. Replaced them all. That's still one of his finest moments, of many, many fine moments. Paul Ryan is speaking at the House GOP Leadership Conference. We'll monitor that for you. This could be an opening for the Never Trumpers. Oh, they're already speaking out. Got Ben Sass from Nebraska. You have John McCain and Lindsey Graham, all three of them. And the only question is, where's Jeff Flake? I'm sure he's trashing Trump as well on the refugee and visa question. Well, of course, the Never Trumpers think this is their moment. They're going to be able to say, see, I told you so. These people are totally out of control.
Mr. President, I'm not trying to start World War III. I'm trying to win the war we're in. We had 8 years of Barack Obama who did not understand how to defeat radical Islam. The only way you're going to win this war is partner with people in the faith. You need Muslims on your side. Your executive order was too broad. You didn't vet it. You didn't take the time and attention you need to execute something I agree with. And you're not going to win the war by lumping everybody into a big pot.
I think he's mixing his metaphors there, but nevertheless, not going to win the war by lumping everyone into a big pot. Okay. So tonight's the big night, 8 p.m. I'll be on with Sean Hannity live tonight to analyze the Trump nominee for the Supreme Court, and special report. We'll be talking about all aspects of the Yates firing replacement and the Sessions confirmation vote, along with a number of others. Tillerson will be voted on in the next 24 hours. He should have 48 hours. He should have 4 or 5 more cabinet members in place. And let me say something about this, by the way, while we're at it. For all the Democrats yesterday who were wailing on CNN about how Trump's team is sowing chaos. Oh, it's President Bannon. It's not President Trump. There's this playwright on CNN last night who I think was one of the most annoying people I've seen on TV for a long time. We really have to play some of his soliloquy that Don Lemon just let him deliver last night. I don't even know what his name. I've never heard of him before, but he was, he's an immigrant, so they put him on and let him just pop off at the mouth. So what you have to remember is when they say that Trump is sowing chaos because 109 people were delayed coming into the country and had to be processed, especially when this thing went down over the weekend, the people who are really sowing chaos and disruption, who are those people? Those are the Democrats who refused to, in a timely manner, confirm key members of this administration. We wouldn't have had the Sally Yates issue if Jeff Sessions had already been confirmed. They know they can't stop his confirmation, but they delayed it anyway. Same thing with the U.S. Trade Representative, with what happened last week with Mexico. Same thing with what they've done with the Department of Energy and other key positions in the Trump administration. By this time, Barack Obama, I believe, had 7 of his cabinet members already confirmed. Trump has a couple. It's not right. They know it's not right, but they know it's hard to run a department with a holdover from a previous administration running it. It's going to cause clashes and a lot of disruption. And that's what the Democrats want. They want chaos and disruption. And meanwhile, Pocahontas was speaking yesterday at the Supreme Court, and, well, she was supremely uninspired.
This is truly the purest form of patriotism. We are here to defend the Constitution of the United States. We are here to live our values, to fight for our values today and tomorrow and for as long as it takes to restore the basic decency and vision of this country. This is who we are.
Do you notice it's just hyperbole? She's never citing a statute or case law or common law. I'll take the Declaration. I'll take anything. Just cite something that puts some meat on these bones. Anything other than what you could maybe put on a bumper sticker or spout on at some late night poli-sci seminar that you took junior year at wherever you went to school. Because that's the level of discourse we get from the Democrats. This is the same type of gibberish you hear at the protests. They're not grounded in actual facts and history or statutory provisions. They're grounded purely in emotion. But they can get pretty far in emotion. You know, they really can. You can get far in emotion. Because why? You have a media complicit in the chaos. The media wants to continue to stoke the fires of chaos, which is why people like Don Lemon and others last night were allowing these people to come on. Let him come on and just spout off all this stuff. Last night, guest after guest after guest came on television and spouted falsehoods about what happened at the Justice Department. You had a few like Turley and Dershowitz who, even though they didn't agree with the executive order, the merits of it, they understood that it was within Trump's legal and constitutional authority to hand it down. So you can disagree with the substance of the executive order, and that's fine. People can disagree on whether it's good policy. That's one thing. But to try to argue that Trump is operating outside the Constitution is just dishonest. Completely and 100% dishonest. And either they're woefully ignorant of what is in the Constitution, or they're doing it purposefully to merely try to delegitimize Trump at every turn. And I think it is the latter. They know he's well within his right to issue edicts on immigration when it comes to judgments that his team is making for national security and other reasons. 855-40-LAURA. We'll get into more of this. Your phone calls. What the left is trying to do early on in this administration was Trump's decision to quickly terminate Sally Yates correct in your estimation? Does it send a chill, as we heard on MSNBC this morning, down the spines of other civil servants just trying to do their jobs? Gosh darn it. We'll take a break. Don't go away. The statement on the appointment of Dana Boente as acting attorney general. The acting attorney general, Sally Yates, has betrayed the Department of Justice by refusing to enforce a legal order designed to protect citizens of the United States. Joe Scarborough said Trump shouldn't have used the word betrayed. I guess you could argue that, why bother even giving her any due in a letter? Just say we've replaced her. But I think using the word betrayed, on the other hand, does that not mean anything? Betray? How do you betray a position, betray your duty, betray the rule of law? Maybe we don't use the word betray enough. Maybe we should use it more when appropriate. But you can quibble either way with whether, you needed to say that. But Joe Scarborough is very apoplectic for little to no reason. So you call right now and you'll get the surprise luxury gift absolutely free. Call them at 800-480-5206. That's 800-480-5206. Genucel puffiness treatment. You get that absolutely free if you order that Esotique XV. Remember, 800-480-5206. The American people need a leader who looks out for their economic interest, their safety, and their security. This is what the President of the United States deemed was the best path forward. The Democrats are trying to sow chaos, disruption, and to emit a lot of disinformation in a very Saul Alinskyite way in order to try to delegitimize this presidency and keep the perpetual protests going. They believe that if they can keep the protests going, they will ultimately put so much pressure on Trump, he'll either put some, scalps on the wall in his own staff, start firing people, or he'll get sufficiently cowed and will drop some of these priorities. Joining us now, Newt Gingrich is one of our favorites, of course, former Speaker of the House, advisor to the Trump campaign and transition. And he's with us now to analyze where we are here in this very busy news day on the Laura Ingraham Show. Speaker Gingrich, how are you? Good to talk to you.
I'm doing well. Isn't it amazing how much stuff's going on?
I love it. You know what it reminds me of, Newt? It reminds me of like when you're up at the plate. And when I used to play softball and played in high school and some in college, you're up at the plate and you got a pitcher who doesn't take a lot of time between pitches. Like, I like to get ready in the box. You have to step out of the box, but you can't step out of the box. If you're Congress or you're one of these pundits who doesn't know the Constitution, it's like bing, 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 bing. Whoosh, here comes a slider. Here comes a knuckleball. Here comes a curveball. Then it's a fast pitch down the middle. Then he's brushing you back off the plate. And you just got to try to stay in the game here, but it's not easy.
No, it's amazing how much is going on, and I think Trump has done a particularly good job of just keeping everything underway so that it's very, very hard for the news media or the Democrats to sort of get resettled, and they're just continually facing these challenges.
Let's talk about the Yates firing last night. I heard from Joe DeGeneva a little while ago, Newton. I know you know Joe well. Joe said it was well known within the Justice Department that Yates was a problem long before she was picked to be the acting Attorney General. Let's listen.
Anybody who knew Sally Yates knew she was a political hack. And in fact, people were reporting to the administration last week that she was seeking to undermine the president's initiatives. And the reason she was fired so quickly was because people inside the department were reporting that she was being a recalcitrant. She was verbally saying things to the staff about not following the president's directive.
Someone made a mistake inside the landing team at Justice in selecting her to be in that position for 5 minutes, let alone several days, Newt.
Well, I think that's right. And I think, again, sometimes these things are going to happen, and particularly with the speed at which Trump moves. But his response is to shift gears and immediately correct it, which is what he did. And I thought he did exactly the right thing. And I thought that it was something which, people could say, this guy is in charge. He understands he's in charge. And she actually made a technical mistake. She would have been a hero to the left if she had resigned.
Right.
And said, I can't do this and it's inappropriate and I'm not going to do it. But the way she did it set him up to fire her, which made him a hero to his own base. So in a sense, she gave him an opportunity to prove how tough he was in a way that actually probably was a genuine opportunity for Trump to reassure the people who voted for him that he was going to stand up and he was going to do what he thought was necessary.
I also think this is good that this happened early on, Newt, in the administration. It's another warning sign for a lot of these young Trump folks that there are lots of problematic activists burrowed inside the bureaucracy of all the agencies at State Department. Tillerson's going to find out what a viper's nest that is. At the Education Department, where I used to work, I saw it firsthand all those years ago when Bill Bennett was Secretary of Education. Even in places like the Department of Transportation, there are political hacks, as Joe DeGeneva called her, burrowed in all of these departments. And it is very important that whoever is going to be the deputy secretaries of these departments goes through office by office to reorient how people's work assignments are doled out, what meetings they can get into, what authority they have. And otherwise, you're at war not only with the Democrats and the media, you're at war with your own departments. So they gotta know that really, right off the bat here.
Well, you realize that of all the campaign contributions from federal bureaucrats, 95% went to Hillary. 99% of the State Department contributions went to Hillary. It's clear, and I think it's human nature. These folks really, really wanted her. They're really appalled by Trump in every way, and that sets up a situation where he's going to constantly face this kind of problem, and they'd better get used to it, and they better get used to solving it.
I heard you maybe it was yesterday, actually. Everything's blurring into one day, Newt. Talk about the communications aspect of these executive orders, how they're rolled out, how they're, if you will, produced. You could produce kind of a preface to these executive orders with the way you lay out facts and so forth. So what about that? How they rolled this thing out on a Friday night. Looks like Tillerson didn't know anything about it.
Well, there are two things. There are two or three things going on when you raise the question of who knew about it. The first thing is that Trump wants to do many, many things very, very fast, and that's his style. And he believes in drowning the system with sheer volume. The second is that the Trump is the opposite, and I just finished last night my 9th speech on the nature of Trump and Trumpism, 8 of them at Heritage and 1 at the National Defense University. They're all available at Gingrich Productions. And one of my points I made last night that really fits what happened this weekend is Trump doesn't believe in extensive, detailed planning to anticipate everything. He believes in moving, and then if a mistake is made, responding so rapidly that you fix the mistake before it does much damage. And that means he will have many more mistakes than an average president, but he'll fix them faster than the average president. And the net effect will be that he's moving forward. And then the last is partly, frankly, Chuck Schumer's fault. I mean, if the Democrats are determined to not go through the process of approving the cabinet and then approving the sub-cabinet and so forth, this government is going to be run by a very small number of people for a long time. And I think the Democrats were hoping that would slow Trump down. And, of course, he just has run over them and said, no, if this is all I got to deal with this week, I'm going to take these guys and do the best I can. And he's going to keep doing that because he has a general belief that momentum is really, really important, and that continuing to do this stuff gives him the ability to stay on offense. And that gradually that wears down the other side. And I think it's frankly, I think it's a pretty good theory, and I think he's executing it reasonably well.
The protest mentality on the left is, I think it's obvious what they're trying to do. They are trying to keep, whether it's the airports or major thoroughfares, major public spaces, filled with angry people, impassioned speeches, and so forth, to again capture the narrative from Trump and try to sow this idea that Trump is the one creating chaos and disorder. You're hearing this from some of the cable hosts as well, and not on Fox but on other networks. How will that play out, Newt? Where people are seeing all these airport protests, and you saw them starting with a women's march and then continuing.
Well, I think the first thing it's going to do is draw our attention to George Soros and the amount of money he's spending to finance this. I mean, as somebody said, I think it was on Fox and Friends this morning, you begin to wonder how come all these people don't have a job? Well, they do have a job. They're doing, they're protesters, and I think that Soros's model is to protest anything and everything. And to try to legitimize Trump, but what it's going to do is it creates a basically Warren, Sanders, Soros begin to define the Democratic Party, and an Elizabeth Warren, George Soros left-wing party is going to end up like the loony left against Thatcher in 1987. I mean, these people have a set of values that are sort of nuts. And I think it's a fight we should be cheerful about taking on. And I think, the Women's March is most famous for Madonna saying she dreamed of blowing up the White House. Well, that's probably not a rallying cry for most Americans.
We're talking to Newt Gingrich here on the Laura Ingraham Show. And Chuck Schumer went on the Senate floor last night and said this.
It was done in such a sloppy and careless way. Major agencies, the Border Patrol, Customs, didn't even know about it. There were major holes in how it was done. It almost seems like back of the envelope. So even for those who might be for this, I am certainly opposed. The slapdash way it was done was appalling and created the chaos.
So it wasn't on the Senate floor, excuse me. That was yesterday, earlier in the day. So he's both attacking the constitutionality of it on the Senate floor last night, and there he's saying, well, they're incompetent. That's the other meme they're trying to cement in the public's eye. This is just sheer incompetence.
But let me make 2 points about Chuck Schumer. The first is he's the guy who's blocking all of the cabinet officers getting approved so that Trump has the people to do the things Schumer's complaining aren't getting done, and they aren't getting done because of Schumer. So it's because they were hoping, the Democrats were hoping, if they blocked all this, it would slow down the administration, and they totally misread how Trump operates. And he just said, "Fine, I'm going to work with the people I got, and if that means there's some things we can't get done, we can't get them done. But it's Schumer's fault." The second thing is, were you at all struck when Chuck cried the other day that 4,000 Americans have been shot in Chicago? But Schumer didn't cry for them. Americans have been killed in Afghanistan and Iraq, but Schumer didn't cry for them. Why is it the only people Schumer can cry for are foreigners? Why don't Americans matter to him? I just thought it was very strange how emotional he got. I'd never seen him be emotional before. And, of course, Trump, who's known him for many years, said he thought it was all phony and not real and what have you. I don't know if it was real or not, but I thought it was very weird.
Well, Trump and I agree on the phony aspect of what Schumer did. I mean, it seemed to me like he was trying to conjure up the emotion for the camera, and so it doesn't. That's neither here nor there. But the perpetual war footing that the Democrats are on is a pure Alinskyite move, and I think you're right. The Democrats are walking ever so far out on the limb, Newt. And the farther out they go, I think the farther away from the ordinary, everyday American who just wants the economy to get better and wants the government to kind of represent their interests. And they don't want this constant caterwauling at the microphone. And I don't think it really, in the end, helps Democrats get elected. It might help them raise money, as we saw with the ACLU raising $26 million over the weekend, which is 6 times their annual budget. So, they might make money in the short term, but I don't think getting power is going to be the result of all this.
Well, I also think that you have to look at what's going on and assume that part of the reason Schumer can't negotiate and can't be reasonable is that the hard left is just gone crazy. And the person who's written the most sobering article on this is Dennis Prager, who last week wrote an article on what he called the Second American Civil War. And I think it's a very real danger. Not in the military sense of this.
Absolutely. Well, I think if they can create chaos and cause violence in the streets, I think they're going to do that too. That's the next move. Newt Gingrich, thank you so much. We'll check out your lectures. We'll link that up on our Facebook page and gingrichproductions.com. Don't go away.